Exodus 17 is right in the very beginning of your Bible. We're looking at children of Israel being delivered from Egypt. How many of you this week, the last 24 hours, you don't need to raise your hand. In fact, certainly better if you don't. How many of you complained about something the last 24 hours? If you're not sure if you did, ask the person next to you. If you complained about something, how many of you are sitting next to someone? Don't raise your hand again. If you're sitting next to someone that complained about something the last 24 hours. Sometimes you don't even have to really complain. Sometimes it's easy to just, I've noticed it about myself. I'll just confess this morning, just my weakness, is I've caught myself. You ever catch yourself sighing? And I try to even point it out when I'm talking to my kids, or Leslie is like, man, did I just sigh about that? Because one, like it's discouraging for everybody. You're just gonna, and it's just discouraging everybody, and it's not very manly. Like I want to stop doing it. I'm working hard on not sighing, because what I'm doing when I do that, I'm thinking in my mind what's going on is I'm going, this is not what I wanted to happen. And if you take it further down the road, this is not what I wanted to happen, but this shouldn't have happened. I think it's not fair that this happened. I don't like this happened. I don't like being here. And it kind of snowballs eventually, but it starts with a sigh, because sometimes in life things just happen that you can't control, that you don't like. Does anybody have that happen in your life right now? I was almost there. I was going to I wasn't going to say anything about it, but it's already hurt a couple of times. So a couple of weeks ago, I had a root canal that went bad, and they pulled the thing, and it's supposed to be all better. And so I went back to the oral surgeon this week, and he said, it's not really getting better, but I'm going on vacation. So you have to go another 2 weeks, and then we're going to cut something, flap it over, sew it back up, and fix it. So sometimes when I speak just the right way, like there's this reverberation or something and a sinus thing that goes through this whole, it's weird, man. It's just not fixed yet. And to make it worse is I like to play. I like to do things. I like to be active, and I can't. I can't swim. I can't jump. I can't run. I can't ride my bike. I can't go surfing. I can't do anything. And so that's for my mental health even, I need that. So I'm walking a whole lot right now. I'm trying to walk and get activity in. But it's just hard, and it's so easy to just sit back and go, See, I did it again. There, I got to stop. See, it's not good to sigh, is it? It's not good to complain. It's not good to do these things. It's not helpful. Remember, what our habit needs to be is when things go sideways, instead of looking around to blame someone else, that's what my brain does. Is it the surgeon's fault? Is it my fault? What happened? Is it the guy that did the root canal first's fault? I don't want to take responsibility. I want to go there. And then we'll say, God, maybe it's your fault. And we put God on trial. God, if you loved me. Now, this is a small thing, but we have had big things. I'm looking out at people that have very big things in their lives, and we're saying, God, if you really love me, why didn't my kids turn out like those people's kids? Why didn't my marriage look like their marriage? Why did I lose the job and they got to keep the job? How come this trial came into my life when I was walking with you? I was trusting you. I was following you. Beware of the moments you're tempted to judge God and doubt His provision, His protection, and His presence. God provides, God protects, and He has promised you that He is with you to the end of the age. But when we get in dry places, when we get in places where things are difficult, our first reaction usually is to blame other people, and then it's usually to blame God. And that's exactly what Israel did. They were tempted. They were tempted to look. We're tempted to look at difficult situations and think that we've missed God. In fact, look what they do. Look at verse 1 of chapter 17. Now, here's where they've been. They have been through the wilderness. They've been slaves in Egypt for 400 years. God sends all these plagues, all these miracles, and delivers them. They walk out of Egypt with gold and all this stuff, and they walk through the Red Sea on dry land, and God swallows up their enemies. They have a worship service on the other side of the Red Sea, and then it's not very long, and what happens? They start to complain. They start to have problems. We need water. We need food. We need all these things. And God provides for them over and over and over again. And they're still grumbling. They're still grumbling. Grumbling is what it looks like when faith forgets. When faith forgets what God has done in the past, we start to grumble. We forget how He's done everything we need to do up to this point. We can trust Him. It says in verse 1 that all the congregation of the people of Israel moved on from the wilderness of sin, that's where they were, by stages, according to the commandment of the Lord. Now, the Lord we saw just last week how God provided for them. He told them he was going to give them bread to eat and twice as much on the Sabbath, and he provides everything they need. He provided basically the best tasting donuts on the ground every day for them to collect. And now here they've moved along, and it's the same, the third verse, I guess, to our song here. They've moved on, and it says that they moved on by stages according to the commandment of the Lord. I underline that because that's important. They are here because God told them to go here. And when they get to this place where God told them to go, where God led them to go, they've all followed this pillar of cloud. And God has led them to this place. They camped at a place called Rephidim, which is interesting because it means refreshment or peace. And they get to this place called Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. And it's funny because that's what happens to us a lot of times. We think, man, if I can just get that promotion, then I'll be satisfied. And it's great for about a week. And then you realize I'm responsible for all these people now. If I could just get that new car, everything will be great. And then all of a sudden it gets scratched or it breaks down. We think if I could just get to this place of rest, if I could just get into this relationship, it'll be awesome. And then you're in the relationship going, if I could just get out of this relationship, it would be awesome. If we could just have these kids, man, our life will be complete. And then you realize, wait a minute, these kids are noisy. Man, this is hard. We think these things will satisfy us, and we find sometimes when we get everything we wanted, we're still in a dry place. What I want you to see even more is that they arrived here according to the commandment of the Lord. God commands us to love our spouse, our wife, like Christ loved the church. That's a good thing. It's a hard thing. But what we'll do is we'll say, well, she's hard to love. Well, man, maybe I married the wrong one. Maybe it's not right. Maybe I missed God. I know people that think that if we just obey God, everything will be. I have friends that have been told by people, by Christians or supposed Christians, that said if you just believed God more, if you had more faith, your husband wouldn't be sick right now. We'll think if you had just had faith, your child wouldn't have gone through that. If you had just had faith, you would have plenty of money. If you just believe, like we're manipulating God in the universe. And the only problem with all that is the Bible, right? The only problem is the Bible. Because we saw that Jesus took all the wrath we deserve. So when stuff happens to us, it's not God being mean to us or mad at us. It's God's ultimately working for our good. We don't understand it all. We don't understand. I had a friend one time that was convinced. She was driving across the bridge. This is like when I was in my 20s. She was driving across the bridge and she got a flat tire because she said she was listening to the wrong music. And I don't know, maybe she was, I don't know, but it was like she thought, man, God is just waiting for you to put on the wrong radio station, to zap, there's your flat tire. That'll teach you. But all the wrath for her was poured out on Jesus. And now he might have been disciplining her, growing her, and that's good, and it was good for her ultimately. But we have this idea that if I just do what God wants me to do, everything will be easy. And they did not get here by disobeying. And in this resting place, they don't really find rest. And so when we look at this room even today, there are really two kinds of people in here. There's really only two types of people. The people that know and love Jesus, follow Jesus, and people that don't. And we think you could tell the difference. You would think you could tell the difference between those who are following Jesus. You can tell the difference easy because the ones who are following Jesus have the easiest lives, right? The ones who are following Jesus, it's not true, is it? Sometimes the ones that are the most devoted to Jesus, that have surrendered their hearts to him, that's what it means to be a Christian. You say, Jesus, you're my Lord. I want to serve you the rest of my life. That's what it means. Sometimes, every day, in fact, godly people get up, read their Bibles, pray, and take ibuprofen, right? Every day, the arthritis still hurts. We still get the diagnosis from the doctor that says we're going to have to do chemo or there's nothing we can do. We still go through it. Our brother Dennis Burns still had to have surgery on his brain this week, and it's been hard and it's not easy. We still have hip surgery, and sometimes it heals quickly, and sometimes there's a complication. Sometimes our children turn out to be amazing, and we get great joy and enjoy them for the best Christmas and Easter and vacation. They call us all the time, and then sometimes they break your heart. and you lay awake at night worrying about where they've been, what they're doing, and how someone raised the way that you raised them could be making the choices they're making right now. You're godly. You follow Jesus and you trust him, and it's still difficult. Following Jesus does not insulate you from difficulty. It gives you the ability to endure the difficulty knowing there's a purpose in the pain. There's a message in the mess. See, what we see, those that really know and love and trust Christ, we know that his presence is more important than the problem. And in the middle of the problem, God's still with us. But these people that we see in verse 1, they're at a place where there's no water to drink. And at this point in the narrative, there's nothing really bad here. They have followed God. They haven't blown it yet. They're about to. You know how that's coming. But they've obeyed. The command of the Lord has led them to the place where there is no water. Have you done that? Maybe you're there. You've been following Jesus and things haven't turned out exactly. A lot of us, things are way better than we ever expected. But there will be seasons of our life where we're going to go through and it's going to be, ouch. It's going to be, this doesn't make sense. What's going on, Lord? And we're going to be tempted to go, oh, God, are you with me? Oh, God, what's going on? It's their fault, right? This would be so much easier if everybody at the house would just realize I'm right and do things the way I want them to do it, right? We wouldn't be in this problem if everybody at work saw things the way I see them. It wouldn't be so bad if the government would just do what I wanted them to do, right? That's what we do. Because it's just easier to do that. But listen, you're not going to avoid difficulty. I just want to make sure that we're clear on that. I want to make sure you don't come to this church and leave thinking that if I follow Jesus, everything's going to be easy. It's going to get hard. There'll be easy times. There will be easy seasons. There are great seasons. I enjoy just the sunset. And it's like God gives us those seasons of rest. And man, enjoy them. But that's not what this is all about. This world is not our home. We're just passing through. You ever have to, remember being a kid and you have to ride in the back seat of the car? Do you have any memories of that, being a kid? And it's like, that's where they are right here. They're in this back seat of the car. They're following Moses, 2 million of them. They don't know where they're just following the cloud. Wherever it goes, that goes. And you're there. And like it comes time for lunch, right? It comes time for lunch. What happens? Well, I want McDonald's. Well, I want Chick-fil-A, right? Because one of you's a Christian, one of you's not. So you say, I want McDonald's. I want Chick-fil-A. And now you got to fight about it. And somebody wins and somebody loses, right? Remember being in the back seat with your brother or your sister? And what happens? Mom, he's touching me. And they're like, no, I'm not. I'm right there. I'm not touching you. It's easy to grumble and complain when you're not in control. And you have to trust that if I say I need to go to the bathroom, we're going to stop, right? That's what you're hoping. Your dad is that kind of dad. And the older he gets, the more it becomes like that because the more he understands how important it is. Dads in their 20s are like, dude, you can hold it. Dads in their 50s are like, oh, we're stopping whether you want to or not. We're all stopping. We're just a rest area. Look at that. I love rest areas, man. That's great. But to be the one that has to ride is hard sometimes. And it's easy to look at the driver's seat and say, I don't think you're taking us the best way. I don't think you're really doing what's best for us here. And what you're tempted to do is you're tempted to sometimes blame others when things go sideways. That's what they do here. Look at verse 2. Therefore, the people quarreled. And the word for quarrel there in the Hebrew is actually a word that means to bring a legal charge against. They bring Moses up. And what they're doing is they're quarreling with Moses. It's not just one person. Have you noticed this was complaining? Like, it's a lot easier to do if you can get someone else to agree with you. Yeah, that guy. I can't believe they said that. Do you know they said that? So it's more than just a sigh. It's a, did you see what they said? Can you believe they did that? And you get to grumble and complain. And they bring a charge against Moses. And they said to him, give us water to drink. Do you notice the difference here? What you would think would happen is God has brought us through the Red Sea. He's swallowed our enemies. He's turned bitter water into sweet. He's given us bread in the wilderness and quail to eat every day. We're loving life. And now we don't have water. Let's get together and have a prayer meeting. Let's seek the Lord and see what he has for us here. We know that. Is that what they do? Nope. It's Moses' fault. They're going to blame somebody else. They're going to grumble and complain. Once you start to blame other people, once you start blaming, you stop growing. Once you look around you and you say, oh, it's their fault or the teacher's fault or the boss's fault or the employee's fault, all these other people, when there's nothing you can do about it, you're looking in the wrong place. And sometimes we put God on trial even when we do that. When we blame other people, we stop growing. You need to do what our friend Jocko says and take ownership of this thing, man. Take extreme ownership and say, okay, we're here because we followed God here. And the question isn't who's at fault. The real question is, what do I do now? This is how it is. Because what happens when we're complaining, we're saying, what if it was better? It could be better. And what is, and what all these things. And there's no such thing as what if. There's only what is. And where you are right now, this situation that you are in is on. There's a reason to be there. And you can either get stronger through it or you can get weaker through it. And it depends on how you respond to it. Are you going to and they're demanding. They're not saying, please go to God and ask him to give us water to drink. No, they're just saying, give us. We demand this. We deserve this. Because they're not humble. Because the humble don't grumble. You remember that? Humble don't grumble. They're grumbling. They're complaining. And Moses said to them, I like this. Moses said to them, why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord? And if I'm one of them, I'm going, wait a minute, Moses. We weren't talking to God. You're the one that led us here. We're just serious. Why are you testing the Lord? By grumbling and complaining, you're actually, the word for test there, it's what God's been doing to them. He's been strengthening them. Now they're testing God. They're not just putting Moses on trial. They're putting God on trial. Saying, God, this isn't fair. This isn't right. We obeyed you. We followed you. You commanded us, and now it's hard. And it's amazing where it even goes here, because it's like now we don't like the way things are, so we get mad at God, and some of us are tempted to walk away from God. We say, God, this doesn't make sense to me, and if that's how you are, I'll just be better off on my own. Well, the reality is you're going to stand before this God one day. He is your judge. And he didn't say, I'm only going to do things that you like. I'm going to do things that are good for you. I'm going to do things that ultimately I'll make right one day. I'm going to allow this stuff to happen, and I'm going to bring it all to the right end one day. But right now, you just have to trust me. And Moses says to them, why do you test the Lord? But it says in verse 3, the people thirsted there for water. And the people grumbled against Moses and said, why did you bring us up out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst? It's the same course, isn't it? How many times have they said this to Moses? It won't be the last. They're like, oh, Moses, you just brought us out here so we could all die. And now if I'm Moses again, my sarcasm would come out and I'd be like, yeah, you caught me. That's what we did. That was my whole plan all along. But he doesn't do that. He doesn't do that. But that's what happens. They start to blame him. And they're not only blaming Moses, but what's really happening here is they're pointing their finger at Moses, and they actually have a group of people that are attacking him almost. They're bringing him really to trial. We'll see in verse 4. But before we get there, I want to jump down to verse 7, because what they're ultimately doing, how Moses said you're trying the Lord, is look what verse 7 says. Moses names this place. He called the name of the place Massah, which means to test, and Meribah, which means to quarrel or to put on trial, because of the quarreling of the people of Israel, and because they tested the Lord by saying, is the Lord among us or not? You ever get there? God, are you here with me? It feels like you're a million miles away. God, I followed you to this town, and now the job hasn't done what I wanted it to do. I prayed that my marriage would get better, and it's getting harder. God, I just wanted some new friends, God, and I still feel lonely. God, what's going on here? God, I trusted you. I gave, I prayed, I did all these things, and I woke up and I still am in pain. Or I believe, I know you can heal. Why haven't you done it? And they're quarreling. They're doubting God's presence. They're doubting God's love for them. They're doubting if he's even among them or not. And he's promised to be with them. God has promised you. He will never leave you, child of God, or forsake you. Now, if you don't know him, you've got some issues. You need to come to him and trust him today. You need to believe in him. But what happens is grumbling makes faith forget. Grumbling is what faith looks like when it forgets what God has already done. And they're saying, no, God is not here. And what they're doing is they're not just asking for water. They're putting God on trial. Saying, God, this isn't right. And that's the difference we talked about last week. The difference between going to God and saying, God, this stinks. I don't like it. And saying, God, this is hard. I need you to help me through this. Closed fists, they're grumbling to God, saying, God, this isn't right. Open hands, say, God, this hurts and it's hard. You're my Father and I don't understand it, but I want to trust you. I want you to get me through this. I want to look to you to help. That's what they should have done. But they're not just asking for water, they're putting God on trial. And so when things go sideways, what they do is they start pointing the finger at Moses. They start getting everybody together saying, let's get rid of Moses. Let's kill him. Let's be done with him. When things go sideways, they start saying, man, if I could just get these people to see things the way I want them to see them, it would be fine if my family would just listen to me, if my kid would just do what I want them to do, if my boss would just, whatever it is. But when things go sideways, Moses doesn't look at them. Look at verse 4. Moses cried to the Lord, what shall I do with these people? I love it. Moses is like, this whole leadership thing would be easy if it wasn't for all these people, right? It's like being a parent would be a piece of cake if you didn't have to deal with these kids all the time, right? Being in your marriage would be great if it wasn't for the other person. Like it's easy. And then he says, what do I do with these people? They're almost ready to stone me. To think about that, to get ready to stone him, you don't stone someone with one guy with a rock. You need a crowd of people to do this. This is how they would kill people. And to do that, you had to convince all these other people that it's Moses' fault. And they were going to convince him that it's Moses' fault and that the best thing to do, right? So Moses is on trial. And they're calling for the death penalty. You let us out here to kill us, so we're just going to kill you first, which really, if you think about it, isn't the most logical thing, right? This is the guy that lifted his rod. He turned the Nile into blood, which is kind of cool. He does kind of the opposite of that there. He gets water from something that brought death, but he took their source of life on judgment on Egypt. He uses that rod to do all these amazing things and split the Red Sea, and all these things happen. This is the guy, when they had bitter water, he throws a tree in the water and it becomes sweet water. They can drink out of it. It's amazing. So let's go kill that guy? Like that doesn't make sense, does it? You know why? Because sin makes you stupid. Yeah, you do dumb things when you disobey God. You're going to go do this. So they say, let's go kill Moses. And Moses comes to God and says, they're about ready. So when things go sideways, Moses looks up. That's what you need to do. When things go sideways, don't use it as an opportunity to walk away from God. Don't use it as an opportunity to blame other people. Use those things that are pain points in your life, this pressure, this dry season, as an opportunity to lean in closer to God than you ever will. Because listen, you will pray better when you're in pain than you will when you're in the middle of pleasure. I pray great in pleasure, Lord. I love you. I worship you. This is amazing. Look at these beautiful deer and how the food was so good. God, thank you. I do that. I think that's good, and he lets us do that. But I'm telling you, when I'm weeping, when I'm really seeking the Lord, when I look back over my spiritual life and I see those times that the roots went the deepest were in the hardest seasons of life, when I look to him. And if I was blaming other people, I wouldn't get that. If I was blaming him, I wouldn't get that. It's in this moment that Moses, he doesn't blame others. He looks up and he sees this trial coming. And so now he, instead of doing what the people did, things went sideways, they went sideways and trusted and grumbled and tested God. Moses went up and he relied on God. Hey, when's the last time you really prayed? I mean, not just thought about God. Like I pray every morning. I write people's names down and I pray, and I think that's good. That's important. I mean, it's been a while. Yesterday I tried to. I went for a longer walk because I can't do anything else. God, I just want to pray for a while. I just want to seek your face. I want to spend some extended time walking. And I realized it's been a while for me. I'm a pastor, man. That's kind of my job. I'll come in here and I'll kneel right here and I'll pray, and I realize it probably goes a minute some days. But a minute happens every now and then. And like I want to be that person that I want my default not to be to go, I want my default to be, God, this is hard. Help me. Pray. Let's seek the Lord. That's what Moses does. And then Moses obeys God and he trusts him to provide. Have you done that? Has God told you to do something and you're just saying, I'll do it later? What do I need to do? God tells you to do something a little bit crazy. A little bit, really it is, if you think about it. If what everyone's going to see Moses do, if this doesn't work, I mean, this is the guy who said, they're about to kill me. And God says, I want you to do something that's going to look a little weird to them. Okay. That doesn't sound like the best plan, but let's go for it. Okay, that wasn't what I would have chosen. But how about this? He says, here's what I want you to do. Here's what I want you to do. I want you, the Lord said to Moses, pass on before the people, taking with you some of the elders of Israel. So now here's what's happening. They're going to walk in front of all the people with the leaders of the people. It looks like a real trial is going on here. And I want you to take with you some of the elders of Israel and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile. Now, Moses did things other than strike the Nile with his staff. So it's interesting that he says the staff that you struck the Nile with. When he strikes the Nile, when he uses the staff and they part the Red Sea, what happens there? That's a picture of deliverance, of grace, of protection and provision. When he strikes the Nile in Egypt, he says, that's showing that I am judging this nation. This staff, this rod, is an instrument of judgment. And I want you to walk before the people and show them that there's a real trial going on here. That I have seen, I have heard, and these elders are walking by, the leaders, the authorities here are walking by, and you have the staff, and it's important that we remember this, that you struck the Nile. That's how God describes it, this staff of judgment. And go. And behold, verse 6 says, I will stand before you there on the rock. That's overwhelming. This is getting real gospel-y right now. I don't know if you get this or not. But I've read this a bunch, and it's easy to read past this. But God says, I'm going to stand on the rock. And I don't know if you don't know the rest of the story yet, but he's going to tell him, well, he says, I'm going to tell you to strike the rock. But before he says to strike the rock, he says, I'm going to be right there. And I want you to take this staff of judgment that really, if you're like in the crowd that day and you see Moses walking with the elders and you know you've been grumbling, talking about stoning him, and all of a sudden here come all the leaders and Moses with the thing, and I can see it being this kind of big and formal thing. I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like talking to my wife going, I hope he doesn't point that thing at us. Right? Judgment is coming. You understand there's been a problem, and now either we've put him on trial, but really we know that we're the ones on trial. And he's saying, I know that they deserve to be struck. They deserve the judgment, but instead I, God says, am going to stand on that rock, and I want you to strike it with this rod of righteousness that I've given you, this rod of judgment. At Horeb. Horeb is where God calls Moses in Exodus 3:1 to come follow him, to go deliver. He's at this place. He says, and you will strike the rock and water shall come out of it. God led you to the place of dryness so that he could meet your greatest need. He says, I'm going to provide. Instead of judging these people, instead of punishing these people, instead of coming down hard on these people, say, get your act together and then I'll give you water. The day they're complaining against Moses and putting God on trial, he says, I will take the wrath that they deserved in myself and provide what they need. It's grace. It's grace. You will strike the rock and water shall come out of it and the people will drink. And then Moses just obeyed. Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. This made an impression on Moses. This idea that God stood on the rock, and I don't know how he saw him, but I'd be a little bit afraid to be Moses if somehow he knew God was on that rock and he says, you take that staff and you strike that rock. That's a picture of punishment, of judgment, of wrath. But he does it. He obeys. He does what God tells him to do. And I believe he understood this because for the rest of his life, he keeps referring over and over again to God as his rock. In fact, one of the last songs that's recorded that Moses writes is in Deuteronomy 32. And there he calls God over and over again, God, you are my rock. You are my fort. You are who I look to. And there's more to that than just saying you're a good foundation. I think Moses is thinking back, saying, God, when we deserve judgment, you took it on yourself. And from the rock, you gave us life. You gave us everything we needed. Further, more than that, not only is this rock a picture of God taking the wrath himself, but we know the way that God did that because we know the whole story. We know ultimately, how does God take his own wrath and get it away from us? He places it on his son, Jesus. In fact, a few hundred years later, there's a guy named Isaiah that writes about Jesus before Jesus is ever born. Isaiah writes about Jesus, and he says in Isaiah 53:4, surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. That word for stricken was the same word that's used for striking the rock. The root word is. Jesus is the one that is struck. He was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed, because all we like sheep have gone astray and sighed and grumbled. We have turned every one to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. I would say even further, that rock was not just God standing on the rock, but I would argue that rock represented Jesus. In fact, that's exactly what Paul said. Paul said this rock was Christ. Look at 1 Corinthians chapter 10. It says, I do not want you to be unaware, brothers, that our fathers were all under the cloud and all passed through the sea, and all were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and all ate the same spiritual food, all ate the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and the rock was Christ. That's what he says. This is pointing us ultimately to look to Jesus and to be satisfied and to be saved. This Jesus is the only hope you have. You're going to have bad circumstances now, but if you're going to be right with God, you have to look to him. In fact, this rock of Jesus, when he's crucified in John 19, the soldier takes a spear and puts it in his side. What comes out? Blood and water. It's clear. It's a clear line. Jesus himself said in John 7, he said, on the day of the last feast, the great day, Jesus stood up and cried out, if anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink. That's my invitation to you today. You realize you're in a dry place, come to Jesus. Say, Jesus, you can satisfy my greatest need, which is forgiveness, my greatest need. Lord, I'm looking to you. He said in verse 38, whoever believes in me, as the scripture has said, out of his heart will flow rivers of living water. Have you come to Jesus? Have you trusted him? Or are you just in the back seat complaining and poking your brother and your sister? Are you trusting God today? He does these things. He puts you in dry places on purpose, and it's to get you to help you trust him, to grow your strength. Do you remember I had a friend who was talking about this week? Remember when your kids were learning to walk? You remember when your kids were learning to walk? You usually had kids? They get up, they stumble around, they look like little drunk people, right? It's pretty funny. They walk around, and they get further and further away from you, though. Like at first, it's just 3 or 4 steps, and we're holding their hands out, and they make it there. And we back up a little bit. And we back up a little bit more. And we back up a little bit more because we know the distance is what builds the muscle so they can have the strength to walk and run and jump and play and go break our stuff later, right? It's the distance that gives the strength. And so if you're in a dry season right now, it's not because God hates you. It's not because he's mad at you. It's he's building spiritual muscle in your life. So you've seen that in your life, haven't you? Like those who've been through some hard stuff, like the stuff that used to throw you for a loop now, you're like, this is no problem. Yesterday, I was in I-4 traffic. Anybody been in I-4 traffic in Orlando coming back from Orlando? Man, that'll try your faith for sure, man. I did it 30 years ago. I was doing it, going to school down there. I was talking to Leslie about that. Like, they haven't fixed this road still in 30 years, man. It's the same thing. It's Saturday afternoon. Why are we stopped on an interstate? And it was crazy. And instead of sighing and grumbling, like I normally would do, Leslie's next to me, so I have to be spiritual. And you know what she said and what I said? She said, well, this is just what the Lord has for us right now. We probably said that 5 times yesterday. Well, this is just what the Lord has for us right now. We're going to count it all joy. It was so good to have that encouragement of someone that's looking to God saying this dry place, this little hard thing that used to mess us up doesn't bother us anymore. There are days it might, but that's what happens. These trials you're going through, they're building strength in you for the future. It's part of the reason, not the only reason. But take heed from what we've read this morning. Psalm 95 says this: He is our God, and we are the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hand. Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as at Meribah, as on the day of Massah in the wilderness. Listen, things aren't going the way you want them to go. Don't let your heart get hard toward God. Don't keep blaming other people. You look to God. If things go sideways, you look up and you trust him. And he says what they did when that day happened, your fathers put me to the test. They put me on trial. The way C.S. Lewis described it is they put God in the dock. The dock is the place where you're going to judge someone. And we understand, really, that at the end of our lives, at the end of all this story, we're all judged by God. But what's funny is we sit back here and we want to judge him. And we're going to say, God, you did something I don't like, so I'm not going to trust you. I'm not going to follow you. Well, that's your only hope. It's like we're getting ready to stone Moses. It's like we're making decisions that don't make sense. If we don't like what he did, the thing to do is not rebel harder against him. The thing to do is look to him and say, God, what do you want me to do now? There's no such thing as what if. There's only what is. So God, how do I live for you in the middle of this? What can I do now? It says, when your fathers put me to the test, though they had seen my work. Haven't you seen God provide? Haven't you seen and you know that Jesus died for you on the cross? And if you've done that, if you haven't, I want to invite you to do that today. In fact, Revelation 22 says, the Spirit and the bride say, come. Let the one who hears say, come. And let the one who is thirsty come. Let the one who wishes to take the water of life without cost. Have you come to Jesus and trusted him yet with your life? Do you believe in him? If you don't, make sure you get that settled. But if you have, what dry place are you in right now? You been there? Some of us, we're not in the dry place, and that's great. Some of us, man, it's like things are better than ever. Man, school is almost out for teachers, right? And for parents, school is almost out, right? And so it's getting a little bit scarier about the summer. Sometimes and these seasons come and they go. But when we're there, instead of looking sideways, instead of blaming other people, let's look to God. What would that look like for you this week? Maybe the trigger for you, every time you're tempted to sigh, you pray. Every time you're tempted to grumble and complain, you intentionally start to thank God. Instead of looking sideways, you start to look up and you start to say, God, I know this doesn't feel fair. Instead of saying this isn't fair, God, this doesn't feel fair to me. I need help. I don't want to come to you like this. God, I want to come to you like this. Lord, I'm looking to you. I'm counting on the fact that Jesus died for me. He rose again. I don't know what tomorrow holds. I don't know if I should take this job or that job or if you're going to provide the job. I don't know what's going to happen, but God, I'm going to look to you. I'll look to you all the way to the unemployment line I have to, but I am going to trust you, God. I'm going to believe. And this situation isn't what I want it to be. It isn't what I wished it was. But God, I didn't expect it to look like this. But in the middle of it, I want my kids and my neighbors to see that I trust you. Not even for their sake. I want people to know that you are worth following, that I believe that you're going to work this out for good. I am looking to you to provide the water that I really need because everything else doesn't really satisfy. What Jeremiah said that his people had forsaken him and they had dug cisterns that didn't satisfy. Instead of going to God for what we really need, we think our job or our wife or our kids or our money will provide it. And he says, no, I'm the only one. You have to look to me. Look to Jesus and drink. Say, Jesus, you're the one. So here's what I want us to do as we end this today. We're going to end really early. I don't know what's going to, maybe it's my tooth, but here's the thing. I want to end really early, but that gives us time to be still for a minute and just think and drink. Let's think about what God has done for us in the past. Let's drink. If you don't know Jesus, this is a great opportunity for you to turn from your sin right now. Trust Him. Just cry. Say, God, please save me. I need to be right with you. I can't make myself right. I believe that Jesus died for me and rose again. I'm going to trust you. If you do that, that's where some of you need to start. There are a lot of you in this room, though. I want us just to pause and think. It might be easier to do with your eyes closed. So go ahead and do that. If you want to take a little nap, you can do that. That'll be good. But let's pause. Let's close our eyes. And I want you to think about the things you have been through in the past right now. And just in your heart, just silently where you sit there. Maybe you can tell God, these are the hard things that I've been through, but you've been faithful. Help me remember what you've done.